I still remember the exact moment everything changed. The conference room was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning, and the tapping of Gareth's expensive fountain pen against the polished table. 6 months of negotiations, sleepless nights, and countless flights between Singapore and Tokyo had finally culminated in the biggest deal our company had seen this quarter. A $12 million strategic partnership with a Japanese-backed logistics conglomerate, and all I wanted was the bonus I'd been promised. I'm just wondering about the compensation structure we discussed before I took on this project, I said, keeping my voice measured despite the exhaustion that had been my constant companion for half a year. Gareth Nolan, my boss of 3 years, smiled. It wasn't the warm smile of appreciation I'd foolishly expected. It was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain can process. Why, Victor? He said, leaning back in his chair. We're actually restructuring the department starting next week. You'll be supporting the sales team directly. You won't be handling strategic negotiations anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. Supporting sales after bringing in a $12 million deal. After 6 months of practically living on planes and in hotel rooms, after missing my own birthday celebration because I was finalizing terms in Tokyo. My name is Victor Langston. I'm 39 years old, and until that moment, I was the head of strategic development at TechFusion, a rapidly expanding tech company looking to break into Asian markets. I had spent the last 6 months of my life negotiating what would become our most valuable partnership in the region, and I had just been demoted. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply nodded, gathered my papers, and walked out of the conference room with as much dignity as I could muster. The entire executive floor seemed to blur around me as one thought crystallized in my mind. Whose name is on those contracts? Back at my desk, I pulled up the preliminary agreements and confirmation emails. As I scrolled through the documents, a strange calm washed over me. There it was in black and white. Due to international regulations and the fact that our company hadn't yet established a proper legal entity in Japan, all the preliminary agreements had been signed under Langston Advisory, my personal consulting firm that I'd maintained as a side business since before joining TechFusion. It had been Gareth's idea, ironically. Just use your company as a temporary vehicle, he'd said. We'll transfer everything once legal sets up our Japanese subsidiary. As I sat there processing this information, my phone buzzed. It was Emery, our M&A attorney based in Singapore. Victor, the Nakamura Group is asking for confirmation on contract ownership. They specifically mentioned they only want to work with you moving forward. I took a deep breath. Tell them nothing has changed. Emma, I'll handle this personally. That night, instead of drowning my sorrows, I began planning. I wasn't going to lash out or make threats. No, I was going to be methodical, strategic. After all, that was my job, my real job, not whatever sales support role Gareth thought he was relegating me to. The next morning, I met Emma for breakfast at a quiet cafe far from our office. She was as brilliant as she was discreet, which is why I trusted her with what I was about to propose. So, legally speaking, I asked after ordering a black coffee. If there's no formal transfer agreement, the contract remains with Langston Advisory. Emma adjusted her glasses. Always the professional. That's correct. Unless you signed a specific document transferring rights to TechFusion. The preliminary agreement is between Nakamura and your company. She paused. Victor, what exactly happened? I explained the situation, and Emma's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. That's remarkably short-sighted of them, she said finally. Have you considered your options? I'm exploring several, I replied, including selling the contract rights to a competitor. Emma raised an eyebrow. That would be legal, but messy. There's also the option of having TechFusion buy the rights from you at fair market value, of course. I nodded slowly. And what would you estimate that value to be for a guaranteed $12 million contract with Nakamura? With their reputation and expansion plans, she did some quick calculations on her phone. At minimum, a seven-figure acquisition price. The next step was to secure my position with Nakamura. I arranged a video call with Takahashi-san, their chief strategy officer, explaining that there were some internal reorganizations happening at techfusion.ia. Want to assure you that regardless of these changes, I remain personally committed to our partnership, I told him. Takahashi-san nodded thoughtfully. We have always valued your approach. Langston. Son, our board was impressed with your understanding of our needs. He paused. We received an email from someone else at your company, Nolan, requesting to take over discussions. I kept my expression neutral, despite the surge of anger. Ah, yes. Gareth is eager to be involved. However, as you know, the agreement is currently structured through Langston Advisory for regulatory compliance. Any changes would require significant restructuring. We prefer consistency, Takahashi said firmly. Especially at this stage, I completely understand, I replied. Rest assured, I will remain your primary point of contact. Over the next few days, I watched from my new, smaller desk as confusion spread through the executive floor. Emails from Nakamura went unanswered because they were sent to my personal business account, not my TechFusion email. Calls to schedule. The next phase of implementation went to my personal line. The $12 million deal that had been announced to shareholders was suddenly stalled, with no explanation anyone could provide. It took exactly 4 days before Gareth stormed to my desk. His face flushed with anger, barely contained beneath his expensive suit. My office now, he snapped before turning on his heel. I followed him calmly, bringing with me a slim portfolio containing the original contracts. When I entered his office, he was standing behind his desk, hands planted firmly on its surface. Do you have any idea what you're doing? He demanded. You're holding up the entire company. Nakamura won't respond to anyone but you, and we have shareholders expecting this deal to move forward. I placed the portfolio on his desk and opened it, revealing the signature page of the preliminary agreement. I'm not holding up anything, Gareth. I'm simply maintaining what I worked for. His eyes widened as he took in the Langston Advisory letterhead. This was just a temporary measure. You know that? I do, I agreed, and I was happy to transfer everything to TechFusion as soon as the deal closed. But then something interesting happened. I got demoted to sales support after bringing in the biggest deal of the quarter. Gareth's expression hardened. This is corporate sabotage. No, this is protecting my interests, something I learned from watching you. Actually, I closed the portfolio. By the way, Nakamura specifically requested I remain their point of contact. Apparently, they prefer consistency. What do you want, Victor? Gareth asked, his voice low and dangerous. Recognition for my work. The bonus I was promised and a position that reflects my value to this company. That's blackmail. I shook my head. It's negotiation. I thought you of all people would appreciate the difference. I left his office, knowing the board would be informed within the hour. TechFusion had already announced the Nakamura deal to shareholders. The stock had risen on the news. They couldn't afford for it to fall through now. Sure enough, by the end of the day, I received an email requesting my presence at an emergency board meeting the following morning. I spent the night preparing, making sure every document was in order, every legal point clear. I wasn't going to war. I was going to a negotiation, and this time, I was negotiating for myself. The boardroom was tense when I arrived. 8 board members sat around the table with Gareth at one end and an empty chair clearly meant for me at the other. I took my seat calmly, placing my portfolio in front of me. Mr. Langston, began Ellie Lono Bishop, the chairwoman. We understand. There's a situation with the Nakamura contract. There's a misunderstanding, I corrected politely. The preliminary agreement with Nakamura was established through my consulting firm, Langston Advisory. At Mr. Nolan's suggestion, due to our lack of a proper legal entity in Japan at the time, and now you're refusing to transfer it to TechFusion, said Thomas Wheeler, another board member. I haven't been asked to transfer it, I replied. I was, however, informed that despite bringing in this $12 million deal, My position was being reduced to sales support. Eleanor's gaze shifted to Gareth, who shifted uncomfortably. Is this accurate, Gareth? We're restructuring the department, he said stiffly. Victor's role was changing. Yes, but it wasn't a demotion. I simply slid copies of the new organizational chart across the table, which clearly showed my position, moved down to levels in the hierarchy. I see, Elialana said after a moment. Mr. Langston, what would you need to transfer the Nakamura contract to Tech Fusion? I leaned forward. I'm not here to hold the company hostage. I want what's fair. I want the bonus I was promised for closing this deal. I want a position that reflects my ability to secure partnerships of this magnitude. And I want assurance that the next time I bring in millions of dollars, I won't be sidelined. What position did you have in mind? Thomas asked. Met Gareth's gaze directly. Global Strategy Director, reporting directly to the CEO. The role would oversee all strategic partnerships across regions with appropriate compensation and team resources. The room fell silent. Gareth's face had gone from red to white. That's my position, he said quietly. No, I corrected. That would be a new position above your current one. Unless, of course, you're planning to step down. The discussion that followed was intense, but civil. Numbers were proposed and counted. Organizational charts were drawn and redrawn. Throughout it all, I remained calm, reasonable, and utterly unmovable on my core demands. 3 hours later, we reached an agreement. I would transfer the Nakamura contract to Tech Fusion in exchange for the promised bonus plus an additional completion incentive, a new position as Global Strategy Director with Gareth's role redefined to focus solely on North American operations, a seat on the executive committee, a contractual guarantee that all deals I personally negotiated would include my signature line originally brokered and structured by Langston Advisory. As we concluded, Eleanor fixed Gareth with a pointed look. We'll discuss departmental restructuring separately, she said in a tone that left little doubt about Gareth's future prospects. 1 week later, I moved into my new office, coincidentally, the one Gareth had occupied until his lateral move to a smaller role focused on regional operations. As I arranged my things, my new assistant, Mia, popped her head in. Would you like me to arrange a celebration for the team to mark your new position and the Nakamura deal? I looked out the window at the skyline of the city I'd barely seen in the last 6 months, too busy flying between continents to secure a future for a company that had been ready to discard me. No celebration, I said, but please set up one-on-ones with everyone on the team. I want to hear their ideas directly. Of course, she said, turning to leave. And Mia, I added, let's review all current contracts in progress. I want to make sure everyone's contributions are being properly documented and recognized. She smiled. Right away, Mr. Langston. After she left, I opened my laptop to find an email from Takahashi Isaacs congratulating me on my new position. Attached was a proposal to expand our partnership beyond the initial $12 million, potentially doubling the value over the next year. I didn't win because I was smarter than Gareth. I won because I didn't forget to put my name in the right place. And if there's one lesson I've learned from all this, it's that sometimes the most powerful move isn't an aggressive attack or an emotional outburst. It's simply ensuring that when the dust settles, your signature is on the right line. In business, as in life, silence is sometimes the best response. That, and making sure you maintain control of what's rightfully yours. The next time someone tries to take credit for your work or push you aside after you've delivered value, make sure you've kept the most important thing, leverage.